Hello, my name is Joseph Roy, and I am with the Baron C. Metz School of Common Law. Today, I'm going to brief you on the Hartford Convention. While there's plenty of negatives about it, we look at the actual menu of that convention, what they actually had going inside of it. So, what negatives you've heard was because they were negative back then. They didn't like that Hartford Convention. The Massachusetts, 4 other states had sent out, well, let's just say Massachusetts, had sent out to all the states the invitation to be at the convention. It was intended for everybody, but only 5 states showed up, or representatives of 5 states. Now, inside this Hartford Convention, there was, of course, the issue that these states may want to secede from the Union. And history is vague on that particular part. There's nothing actually in the convention that was written up that said that, but it was common knowledge at the time of what was going on. Now, nobody challenged the fact that they had a right to secede. That was never challenged in those days. And that's an interesting thing to look at, because when the few years later, when the South says we're going to just secede, you can't do that. We're permanently together. You know, secession is a right. It's not something that you define as you will or take sides. It is a right. It's given to you by God. Did God help Moses secede from the Egyptians, the Assyrians? Did the United States, as we are informed of what we are today, but let's go back to the original. Did they or did they not secede from England? We are a product of secession. Our Declaration of Independence is probably about the best evidence of that, at least if no other country or dictators believe in the secession. Ours do. The original American people, the original American United States of America, believed in secession. They did it themselves. We are a product of secession. So I'm pretty sure that Lincoln had a copy of the Declaration of Independence somewhere on his desk, or whoever knows what that Lulu had, because it's clear that he literally rejected any constitutional thing at the time. For that matter, any kind. I mean, they were changing the term union, so, you know, when Lincoln was hollering, we're going to preserve the union, well, we already know that they was already redefining union, so we don't even know which one did he meant. Did he meant the one before the war, or the one after that's now being formed? Well, we pretty much know which one he means now. We probably wouldn't at the time. But anyway, the Hartford Convention, we do have some issues that probably would have stood probably a 99% chance of not only cleaning up America to where it would never have its problems that it has today, and there would never be a civil war. The reason for this is because in 1814, when they were having that convention, is they submitted a few amendments that they wanted to have before put into the Constitution. There were 7 total. I'm just going to cover the main ones. There was some that was okay, could live with them or live without them, for that matters. It's somewhat irrelevant on some of them now, purpose for them. But the 3 that I want to center in on, and the main one would be the Commerce Clause. They wanted restrictions on the Commerce Clause. Well, we still don't have restrictions on the Commerce Clause. And you can see the wreck we are in. The economics control of this economics by the governments, as if it's their job to be involved in the economics and the planning of our social life. It has nothing to do with them. Anyway, the the restrictions of the Commerce Clause should have been brought forward. The convention was bringing in its interest. There was marshals showing up over there, just sort of hanging around. They knew they couldn't interfere, and they knew they were, for that matter, under them, not over them. And so they were just curious, and they just hung around and listened to what was going on in the town, and etc. in Hartford. Well, the Commerce Clause, if you would look at how the federal, now federal, what they mean by national, controls practically anything. I don't know what they don't control under the so-called Commerce Clause. And so in the future, we'll get into a lot of cases where they pulled some pretty good shenanigans on that. The other amendment that I wanted to bring out, which probably would have stopped the Civil War, and more than likely would have, it would have been definitely we don't know what the contentions would have came on anyway, since I had mentioned to you earlier about John Taylor explaining these defined words, and so there was a contention about states' rights and the true understanding of what the Constitution means. Well, the amendment that was presented as well was the immigrant amendment. A lot of people, today they say that we are a nation of immigrants, but that's false. That's not really false. It's just plain false. We are not a nation of immigrants. We were states already established, been here for no telling how long. I mean, you can go back and get particular dates on some of the states and etc. But let's go ahead. We go back to the Pilgrims' days, but we were here, established our system. We seceded, not as immigrants. We seceded and became independent states out of England. That's what we are. That's also why in our Constitution we had immigration laws. We didn't consider ourselves immigrants. We considered anybody coming will be immigrants. So we're not a nation of immigrants. Let's get that out. Second, the immigration amendment that was proposed was that no immigrant can take office. Now why that's such a solid effort to specialize our nation into what it is, and not just let anybody come over and start getting into these offices, makes a lot of common sense for that matter. Most of your countries, for that matter, still practice that. You don't just go over there and get in office in these other countries. You go to China and see how fast you'll get in one of their offices. See how fast you'll even become one of their citizens, and see how it works. Well, who cares about China? I don't. But I am concerned in America. So what I'm going to bring out to you is about the immigration. It was the immigrants from Germany in 1848 that stirred every bit of it up. You go back and see what they did. They come over here. They're called the 48ers because of that. And they began the Republican Party. Now, history is a little bit vague on whether they actually invented it or created it or just tore apart the Whig Party and, reestablished it into the Republican Party. But whatever the case is, they were the Republican Party, mainly of German immigrants that came over from the Karl Marx fan club and the doctrines that Engels and Marx had, and stirred up things to a point where we had a civil war. It was even instigated even after the war. Carl Schultz was one of these immigrants, and he was no longer over here 12 years here. He was in some of our senates and our, I forget one of his offices, but he's had a couple. And even after the war was over, he just wouldn't let things settle down until Reconstruction Acts got out there and helped promote false stories of the South still doing things, and that they're going to have to abide by us now, because if you'll recall, the Reconstruction Acts was pretty much a way to force the states to submit to the new power, the new government, the new union. And that's what you're under now. I mean, you're not going to get out from under it until you wake up and you start making people stick to it, and you get this out to millions and millions and millions and millions of people. And then when so-called candidates realize that, oh, I'd like to be a real congressman. I'd like to actually represent your state. I'd like to go in there and practice the Constitution. Well, you know, okay. That's another lesson, too. We've got plenty of them. But the Hartford Convention had the Commerce Clause to be restricted. And if it didn't get restricted enough, then we could put another one in later and get it restricted again. But we could have controlled this, I don't know what you'd call it. It's probably would have to be profane and literally very abrasive to the ears to really describe the corruption of these governments today. So I will leave that alone for trying to fish out that word that would define properly the idiocy of our governments today. The other constitutional amendment attempt to be in the Hartford Convention was the embargoes. And of course, you know, setting embargoes sometimes are very valid. It's not a matter of whether it's a good thing or bad thing. It depends on what the embargo is for and who you're setting it on and the purpose. But they did want it restricted down to only 60 days. The advantage to that is, first of all, it keeps the government working because, you know, when you put in an embargo, just leave it indefinite or perpetual, it's a whole lot of effort to ever get it off. When you could just give it a 60-day deal, and if it did need extended because of the effort and the purpose of why you did the embargo, either needed extended, well then you would go and have a new embargo on that same issue, and it would be alive again for 60 days. There might be a few times that you may have to do that a little extra. But it is not a dilemma. But it could and would at least solve some of these perpetual laws that just set forever, and no one feels like it's efforts to put forward again to get it off, and so either way you've got a perpetual embargo. So that wasn't a bad amendment as well. I know Massachusetts was complaining. One of the amendments was also about the no president can be elected from the same state that the previous president was from. And they got that because Virginia was getting quite a bit of repeats. Now, in the first 6 presidencies, though, I don't know why Massachusetts was that upset. They had had 2 out of the 6. But, you know, it had its validity for possibly something there, but it's not exactly that important. We've had, I think Ohio had a few coming straight from them for a while, but overall that's not been a problem. But the main thing of the Hartford Convention was the secession was never challenged. The embargo would have been a little better worked out as far as just a 60-day embargo, and if it was really necessary, go put it in again. The main one would have been the Commerce Clause. You would say that the immigrant law would be the main one if we knew for sure that it would have stopped the Civil War. We don't know the contention that we had before the 48ers showed up. But they did come in there and take office, and that's where it went. But the Commerce Clause has been our demise to this day. So, in brief, the Hartford Convention probably needs to be resurrected, and at least some of its principles be brought back up. It sort of faded away, and the reason why it went away is because we just won the War of 1812, so everybody's parading in the street, everybody's happy, and everybody's just carrying on, and this seemed to be a negative. So it just helped compound the so-called attitude of them old people at the Hartford Convention. In fact, most of the people that was in that convention spent the rest of their career life defending themselves from being there. It appeared to be a very negative. People didn't like it. I think when you really look at it for what was in it, the stories behind it, and of course the history books wants to be very vague, and we'll get into that in the future of when I cover the pre-Civil War history books versus the history books written after the war, and how they treated the Hartford Convention. But we want to close it out now because keep these as short as possible. If you have any questions or want something covered, email us at dueprocessexplained@gmail.com. Thank you. May the Lord bless you.